One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have amazing Chris Campbell, who you guys have all been waiting for, and she will be talking about the topic of codependency, how it leads to patterns of toxic relationships, and how to break the cycle. Chris, I hand it over to you. This is all yours now.
Oh, Tulsi, thank you so much for inviting me. And I know these toxic relationships are a real challenge in so many people's lives. And when you get stuck in them, it's really confusing as to what got you there, and even more confusing, how to get you out. So hopefully I can clarify a few things for your, what you call the members, your friends, your community, yeah. And so, yeah, let me get stuck in. I've suffered from what people call narcissistic abuse with two different people. So I've experienced real toxic relationships myself. They were both very different types of toxic people. But since then, I was a coach before. I actually fell under their spell, or whatever you call it. And so I've just developed my coaching practice to help people with emotional dysregulation, because what toxic relationships can do, insidious toxic relationships like those ones that present narcissistic type behaviors, sort of really emotionally dysregulate people. So that's what I've moved to. I obviously understand myself, because I was like extremely emotionally dysregulated, being suicidal and everything. So I know what it's like to be in that place, and also know what you need to do to get out. So hopefully I'll be able to share some sort of wisdom with your community, and that they'll get some real value from it. Let me just share, but like Chelsea, technically I'm not the most adept person. So we all cross our fingers.
Crossing fingers and toes.
Okay. Are you seeing your screen?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. So now this is the title that Tulsi and I agreed, and we are going to cover this. But so I've already mentioned some of the stuff to you about. I've trained as a life coach since 2009, and why I specialize in narcissistic abuse. And I've also just mentioned to Tulsi, I've just come back from my Portuguese lesson, which sort of nukes my brain a little bit. I'm really struggling with Portuguese, but we will persist, and we will get there one day. Okay, so first of all, just if we look at the Merriam-Webster dictionary, I chose the Merriam-Webster dictionary because it's the only one that doesn't seem to directly refer to addiction in relation to codependency. And so it's more typical of what we're going to be talking about today. Addiction fits into exactly where we're going today, but not so much for the person who might consider themselves to be codependent as such, or have codependent characteristics. So it's a psychological condition or a relationship in which a person manifesting low self-esteem and a strong desire for approval has an unhealthy attachment to another, or often controlling or manipulative person. And then they also say, such as a person with an addiction to alcohol or drugs. Now, we all know it doesn't have to be someone who's addicted to alcohol or drugs that we can become in ourselves addicted to if we have those codependent tendencies. And then we'll go through about how this leads to toxic relationships having codependent type characteristics. But just to also say a few things, like you could have codependent traits, but not be in a codependent relationship. So therefore you can have where you attach your needs always to something external. And that is the point of codependent traits. It's not always necessarily someone. You could be codependent to a car. Maybe you're fanatical about your car and it's the world to you, and you live for your car, you do everything around your car, maybe your work. That could be a codependent characteristic. Or you could be in a codependent relationship, and a codependent relationship is almost like a balance, where the one tends to give everything and the other one tends to take everything, and that's how the relationship balances. And obviously that's not healthy for the one doing all the giving the whole time. And I just want to mention that the danger of labels, if we stick ourselves into we are codependent, or we are an empath, or we are we are, oh God, there's so many, I can't even think of all of them now. What's that, sensitive, super sensitive person, I can't remember what they're called. You see, I don't even acknowledge those kinds of labels. The thing is that we often miss who we really are because we're so stuck in trying to attach ourselves to some kind of label, which is the problem in the first place with almost all of these labels or terms as such. So I'd just like to encourage people that not to, or actually actively discourage you from wanting to call yourself codependent or an empath or something. Just recognize the traits of those kinds of traits and highlight the areas that you can recognize within yourself and move from there and move away from the label. Because we're all very different, unique people and also very complex. Who we are, why we are, the way we are. There are very, very many complexities and you cannot fit within a list. When I talk to clients, there could be certain aspects from all over the place and it doesn't just fit like under codependency or under empath or under people pleaser. They're all very diverse. And so I just wanted to mention that beforehand. Okay, so I'm going to mention, sorry, Chelsea, did you want to say something?
No, I was just, we are on the same slide. Just wanted to let you know in case you you are trying to change slides. So I'm seeing
you're in codependent traits.
Yeah, so I'm seeing codependency, how it leads to patterns, just the title where we are at. So I just thought, let me let you know if you have moved on from that one.
Oh, well, thank you, because I have moved on from that one and it's not showing you. Okay, let me see if I can, let me stop share and try again. Sorry,
Sure.
do you want to start over or do you want to just carry on from here?
So we can carry on from here. You can probably go back to your slides and just move it slowly to where you've passed. So then anyone who wants to take notes can take notes and then go back to where you stop. Yeah, so up to you how you want to do it.
Okay, let me just go try to do the presentation in a different view. I'm so sorry about this.
That's okay.
Like I said, I'm a little bit technically challenged. Let's see, present. Enter full screen. I think that's what I don't want. Only that your audience sees, drag it to the screen, and enter full screen now.
So usually what I do is I open the presentation to, to where you want to change the slides and to move from slide to slide. Then I go screen share and then I select the screen I'm on to share. So then you can move the slides. That's how I do it.
Okay, let me just try this. I've got it. And so what are you seeing at the moment now?
Okay, so now I see a person with codependent traits, a codependent relationship, the danger of labels. Say, yeah.
Yes, but that's still my screen though.
Okay. Yeah, now I can see your small slide on the side as well. Oh, now we back to you again. I don't see the screen share.
Sorry, Chelsea.
Don't worry, it's okay.
No, it's not okay. I had it all. I was practicing and it was all fine. Oh, it always happens, doesn't it?
We stopped. At least we stopped in the beginning, not when you're in the middle.
Of course, I went and closed down my whole Canva.
Don't worry. I'm sure that everyone is going to get so much of value out of this. They're already started. They're waiting for this. So please take your time. Don't worry.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so I've opened it up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try again.
It's okay.
Okay, share. And so it's the screen share. And now, Chelsea, I'm going to present.
Okay, so we on the first slide, and if you want to move,
I don't need my my notes, so it's okay. I'll just present straight from the screen.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay, well, I'm really sorry about that, and I'll just move you out the way, Chelsea.
That's okay. And if you want to change slide, then let me see if you go on to the next slide, then we know it's ready.
Okay.
Yep, all good.
Okay, sorry everyone. All that drama. Okay, so you didn't see this. This is the Merriam-Webster dictionary description of codependency. Sorry, I didn't realize you didn't see that. So, but I just said this is just literally a description, and it's most accurate to what we're talking about today, rather than most of the other descriptions in the other dictionaries, which specifically relate to addiction. And we're going to go through how these traits lead to toxic relationships. And I mentioned before about, you could have a person who has codependent traits, and it doesn't have to be only attached to another person. It could be attached to objects too. And I gave examples about cars or houses or whatever it might be, a boat, work, or codependent relationships where you have that one normally giving and the other one always doing the taking, and the mention of the danger of attaching yourself to a label. Okay, so here are some codependent traits, and I'm going to go through them. These are sort of a general list of codependent traits, and the ones that are highlighted in the pinky color are the ones that tend to lead to toxic relationships. And this is why I'm saying a label it can be quite dangerous, because if you consider yourself to be codependent, you're not going to fit, all these traits are not going to fit with you. Okay, but we're going to look at the ones as we go through, and I'll just mention the ones that lead to toxic behavior. So if we are feeling responsible for solving other people's problems, means you're always getting involved, you're always putting your energy into other people. The reason why people, well, this codependency trait is that people don't see the value in themselves. They have the need to create value outside of themselves. So they're always trying to encourage others to see the value within them, because they cannot see the value within themselves. Okay, and you'll understand why the solution is what it is later on. So you can understand feeling responsible for solving other people's problems. You're always getting involved in other people's problems in their lives. Offering advice when it isn't asked for, and that is where you want to feel as if you're contributing in some way. So it's about trying to get some value, create your value in your surroundings. Difficulty adjusting to change. That's with people who haven't developed their emotional resilience in some way. So they're literally relying on others to help them just stay calm in some way. And that's not something that tends to manifest it's not the type of person that tends to get involved in a toxic relationship as such. Okay, expecting others to do as you say. Now, these people tend to be the toxic people as a codependent, not the people on the receiving end of a toxic person. Difficulty making decisions, and that's very similar to difficulty adjusting to change. And chronic anger, again, they're the toxic person in the relationship if they have chronic anger. So you can see it's very variable, and if you want to sort of label yourself as codependent, you'll see it's just like, who am I kind of thing, yeah? Yeah. And it's more feeling used and underappreciated. So that's normally the person who's always doing something for someone else, but they have the inner sense that they're possibly being used and abused, but yes, they don't stand up for themselves to speak there for what they want. People pleasing to be liked or loved. So that's literally, those types of people, always giving, always there when someone says, can you help me? There's never a no that ever comes along for those people. Lack of trust in self or others. These people don't tend to get into relationships because they don't trust anyone enough to get into a relationship. And so you'll find that very often, if you look at Facebook groups or something, you have a lot of those people who say, I'm never getting into a relationship again. And that just shows their lack of emotional resilience. They've got no emotional resilience to be able to recognize that they can go out there and they can deal with whatever comes into their life. and also trust that they are going to be able to choose people who are going to treat them better in the future. It does take work though. Okay, feeling like a victim, and that's normally people who have been through some kind of trauma before, but they're stuck in victim mode. And you really have to start building that self-awareness and be willing to get out of that, to get out of codependency. But that's quite typical of people who have suffered from some kind of trauma and they haven't done any processing of the emotions afterwards. Taking everything personally, that's because they're very aware of how others perceive them. So they in a constant attention of how they're going to be perceived by others. So if someone says something critical about them, it's automatically they take it personally because that's obviously how they think that other people perceive them, and they have to be very defensive about it because that's how they live their life. Lying to yourself and making excuses for others' bad behavior. Now that's typical for people who are in toxic relationships and who stay in them. And it's really because it's about the abandonment issue, is they have a fear of not having that person to be codependent on because that's all they know how to survive. And that's why they excuse themselves for being in that relationship, because they don't have the emotional resilience to get out. And then we have the helplessness and anxiety, which is very typical because literally there is that lack of emotional resilience. Okay, I know there was a request about going into typical roles played out, but other than these typical people of being a caregiver, rescuer, supporter, there's no real typical role. And like I said, it's, you know, each individual is unique and people's situations are very unique and very complex. So it's difficult to say you are the caregiver as a codependent, and that's that. It's not that simple. There might be a caregiver in one relationship, and there might be the toxic enabler in another relationship, because you know you find quite a few relationships where they're undermined at home, and then at work they're sort of pushing everyone about because they can, because they're so undermined. So it all depends on personal situations about what's going on in your life and why you are where you are. Okay, so this tends to be what causes codependence. They're experiencing physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, having a parent or caregiver that suffers from addiction, a mental disorder, or a debilitating physical illness that creates a situation where parent and child roles are reversed, having a controlling or overprotective parent, or one that puts their own needs above that of the child, being abandoned physically or emotionally by one or the other parent. Now, this all sounds quite extreme. If I get a client that comes in and they mention all that, then I think, okay, you know, I understand completely why you have emotional dysregulation. Because when you have these kinds of things, it's all very obvious why you're emotionally dysregulated. And but it's not as simple as, oh, so I suppose let me explain, is that if you're, say, physically, emotionally, sexually abused, your rights are undermined constantly. You're not given the right to speak up. And that process, and that's what's quite similar with narcissistic abuse, is that you're quite insidiously undermined. The only difference with narcissistic abuse is it's insidious rather than blatant, like many physical, emotional, and sexual abuses, or some of these other conditions, is that when you're not allowed to care for yourself and have your wants and needs met in itself, that's all it is, and you're not allowed, or not allowed, but you're not able to have a significant bond with the caregiver. So there are those two elements, is where your wants and needs are not met and you're not able to bond with some caregiver. It doesn't have to be your mother or father, although research has studied have proven that the bond of a mother is far more important than the bond with the father. However, if your mother is in some way toxic, is emotionally detached in some way, that's obviously going to do more harm than having a father that is nurturing in some way. Okay, so this is why I'm saying it's not like, you know, this is how it is. It all depends on your circumstances as to what contributes and what contributes to your emotional dysregulation or your behaviors of codependency. And like I said, it's not that simple. You know, I could have someone like me. I had parents who were very supportive, encouraging, but they were emotionally, they didn't encourage us to share our emotions in some way, but in every other way, they provided us with a fantastic upbringing. But for me, I was a bit of a sensitive child, unlike most of my siblings. I come from a family of 6, and it's just my one brother and I who are slightly different to the rest of us. And so for me, that was extremely important for me to feel safe. And in fact, I was, other than relationships, intimate relationships, I was completely independent, confident. Everyone would consider me to be emotionally regulated in some way, but just in relation to intimate relationships, I was awful. I was a serious codependent, terrified of being discarded at some point. But many people live their whole life in that way. So in some way I was quite lucky, but so I'm just trying to say, and I ended up in very seriously toxic relationships, even though I had a reasonably good upbringing. In comparison to most people, it was pretty good. So I just wanted you to understand, you don't have to have those like serious abusive conditions to have to struggle in life later on in relation to codependent behaviors. Yeah, does that make sense, Chelsea? Any questions?
Yeah, most definitely. We do have some questions here, as you know, but I'll leave it for you to when you reach that phase.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so just to mention the anecdote, so to breaking the cycle is learning to love yourself, and that's about learning to love yourself builds that emotional resilience. And so it's really emotional resilience, and I will swear 100% that to develop your emotional resilience is about learning to love yourself. Without learning to love yourself, you're never going to become emotionally resilient. Okay. But I thought I'd just go through sort of some other traits. We've got that codependency under the banner of codependency. But I just want to share with you some characteristics of people we identify without self-love. And what you'll find is that many of these will match you too. Okay, I'm not talking about you, Chelsea. I mean you in general, the bigger group. So if you're needy in relationships, so that's quite typical with codependency. Close or intimate relationships are chaotic and toxic, and I've just noticed a spelling mistake. But your close relationships do tend to always be somehow chaotic or toxic. You may suffer from eating disorders. And so if you suffer from an eating disorder, you're guaranteed to be emotionally dysregulated in some way and not be self-loving. You're hypervigilant and frequently triggered. So if someone, we all know people like that, and you might be one of those people, is if, someone says something, suddenly it's just a reaction as if, why did you say that? And people look and say, what on earth is going on with that person? So we're all triggered in some way, but there are some people who are really hypervigilant and are literally triggered by just about everything. And anxiety, perfectionism. Now, lots of people consider perfectionism to be a positive, but it's just a sign of lack of self-worth, because people are so committed to being perfect the whole time because they're worried what's going to happen if they're not perfect. And so it's not a positive. So if you are a perfectionist, try and find ways to change that. You'll be far happier. Lack of assertiveness, and that is really just saying no when you don't want something, or saying something in a letting someone know how you feel about a situation that you feel they might be undermining you, or just literally when they ask you for help with something, and saying no when you really can't help them without any guilt attached to that. Feel overwhelmed and stressed out, body conscious. So obviously body conscious people have some kind of lack of self-love if they can't love their body. Negative emotions scare you. And so this, I know with my clients, is something that is consistent all the way through. Is if someone is emotionally dysregulated or lacking self-love, if they've had a toxic relationship, they haven't become aware of their emotions in some way. So that's a real biggie, that we'll spend some more time on that in a while. Uncomfortable spending time on your own. And we all know that's quite typical. There's also the other side of that, is where you just want to spend time on your own. because you struggle to be in the space with others. And so that's what many people refer to as an empath. You know, everyone's wanting to, that's what I'm talking to you about, the label of the empath. You really don't want to be an empath because it means you're struggling in life, and it's a lack of emotional resilience. So if you feel you are an empath in some way, I would encourage you to just commit to building your self-love, and you'll find that life will become a lot easier for you in engaging with those people around you. Don't commit to self-care because you see it as selfish. Apologize all the time and find it difficult to say no. Okay, so then we'll just quickly go through, if you do have a healthy level of self-love and you freely celebrate your successes, you know, you don't hide or, you know, sort of want to cower when you're successful, you just openly share it, and you wait for people to congratulate you. And if they don't, you don't really care anyway, because you just feel good about yourself. You know exactly what you like and are not afraid to ask for it. You know your strengths and your weaknesses. You have a strong sense of purpose. So that's quite important. It's about sort of having an idea about what your values are. So literally in your life, you're working towards what's really important to you. You're comfortable feeling strong emotions, because for many people, as soon as they start feeling sadness or fear or things that lead to their anxiety, they move themselves away from that, distract themselves from that, so that they don't have to deal with it and go deal with something else. And that's extremely harmful. The longer and more often you do it, the more damaging it becomes. Okay, you listen to your body. Our body actually, you know, when say you feel it in your gut, it really is the brain-gut connection. So that's a physiological reaction, in fact. You're not defined by how you look. So you look the way you look, and either people accept you or they don't. And you're committed to self-care, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a moment. You don't hold on to the past. You know, this where you say, oh, you know, this is just who I am. This is what's created me like this. We have the ability to change just about everything with this. Okay, possibly not all physiological elements, but in our mind, we're definitely able to change the way. So neuroplasticity is now proven fact, and that we can change the way we see and think things absolutely completely, and actually change the way cells actually fire within our brain. So there's no this like, this is who I am, I can never change, because it's now proven that that is not the case. And you're comfortable with alone time, and you love who you see in the mirror, even on a bad day. Okay, and that's super important. You'll know that when you have one of those bad days, we always have them all the time, but you get to the stage when you know they're just going to pass, and you look at yourself in the mirror, and you really look pretty rubbish, but you can still have that compassion for yourself and a little smile on your face, and how you still love yourself. Okay, so why is loving yourself so very important? And I'm going to go through that now so that you can recognize the aspects of building self-love, how they lead to improving our relationships with others, and how it all becomes intermingled into one. Because you'll realize that the hard work in loving yourself requires so much self-forgiveness and self-compassion that we've just never given ourselves before, that when we can do it for ourselves, it becomes super easy to give it to others. And that's really what makes the world go round, is compassion. Be aware, it's not empathy, it's compassion. Empathy is where you have a strong feeling, you feel the same sort of thing for someone as what they may be going through. And that really is very takes a lot of energy from you. It is not what you want. Compassion is where you can detach yourself from actually feeling the emotion, but support the other person in working through that process. They're two very different things. If you spend a lot of time feeling empathetic, building your self-love is definitely going to make a huge difference for you. And you need to fall in love with yourself so that you can be loved and love others better. Okay, this is not not just about having someone love us, but also recognizing that it's other person receiving the love from us. And once you build your self-love, you'll realize you do love in a very different way, that is received in a very different way, that actually contributes to that person. I have this saying is, be the drop that creates the ripple. And so how your behavior impacts everyone around you. And if you love differently, once you've built your self-love, you'll find you love differently, where the way you love will encourage that person that's receiving your love to start loving in a different way too. It might be a little thing here or there, but you'll find that it will start creating that drop. Okay, so how to build yourself up. So I'm going to tell you categorically that building your self-love is the answer to codependent behaviors, okay, or any struggles you're suffering from if you feel you're codependent. But I'm telling you, if you're suffering from any of those characteristics of lack of self-love, whether you're codependent, whether you're an empath, whether you're a people pleaser, whatever you are, you need to build self-love. If you're struggling with those anxieties, whatever it is, if you're struggling with life, you need to build your self-love. Okay, it doesn't matter what label you're under. So this is how it all works, is that we have the self-awareness, the training of our thoughts, and getting comfy with our emotions. And these three aspects have to work together all the time when we're working to build our self-love. And they're not alone. And I just want to show you, and it's really encompassed by mindfulness and self-care. So mindfulness and self-care has to be practiced all the time, but we really have to focus our core attention on the self-awareness, which is the reflection, the training of our thoughts, perspective, and that's really active training, and getting comfy with our emotions, which is also an active practice. So it's what I always help my clients do is creating new habits of living. And those new habits of living takes a lot of practice. And like I say, anything we practice, we become better at. And it is really about practicing new ways of living. But if you think, most of my clients are actually in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I don't tend to have younger clients, they're mainly older ones, and they've been practicing bad habits for at least 40 years. So for them, it's far more challenging because they literally have to try and practice themselves out of the bad habits while they're still trying to practice the new habits. So you can imagine how challenging it is for someone who's been practicing those bad habits for so long. So if there are any youngsters watching this, I encourage you to start this practice of self-love a lot earlier, so you're not like people like me at the ripe old age of mid-40s who finally realizes the answer to life. Yeah. So we start with self-awareness out of those three elements. And so what I feel are ideal ways to develop self-awareness is through journaling. And it's therapeutic journaling, not just random journaling. So there's the questions about, what's the situation, the facts of the situation, what went well, what didn't go well, how could I have contributed to make things better, and what am I going to do to make things better next time? What can I do now to improve the implications of the situation, if there were any? So it's very, very specific journaling. It's not just like, writing to my journal every day. Then there's mindfulness, spending time, and it could either be full-blown meditation, but just literally mindfulness, staying in the present, so not concentrating on the past, not concentrating on the future. And that's the most important thing. It's about spending time in the present without thinking about the past, without thinking about the future. Constantly acknowledging your thoughts, and that will also go into your journaling, and general reflection on experiences in your day-to-day life. Then we come on to retraining your thoughts, and this is actually the most challenging thing for most people, and where most people need help from professional support. So most people, they have the situation, it's an automatic interpretation, and then the emotion comes out of that. So what we encourage people to do is to recognize the emotion that's coming out of the situation, identify the thought that created that emotion, and then change the thought, and you change the emotion. And It might sound a little bit complex there, but it's actually quite simple. But you can understand how that takes quite a bit of practice to do that. And that's mostly the most work I help my clients with. Once they can start doing that, everything else becomes so much easier. Then getting comfortable with negative emotions. Now you can use any exercise. I have one of my favorites that most of my clients can do, but it uses a lot of visualization. And I've just recently had a client who can't do, they've got that aphixalexia or whatever it's called, people who can't visualize. So they've had to use different kinds of exercises to help them become comfortable with those negative emotions. So like I've said, we've got those 3 aspects that you do, and you don't do them, it's not a linear process. You're doing all these things at the same time. And you're doing them for my clients. I encourage them to do 20 minutes of journaling a day and 5 minutes on the emotions exercise. At the beginning of your self-love journey, this is super important because if you go into the sort of trying to deal with the situation without supporting yourself in the journaling aspect, then that's when things become a bit challenging, and the emotions exercise. If you do it without those 2 elements, what often happens is what we call the aftershock. So when you go into the self-love journey, you start building the self-awareness, and you start realizing the reality of your situation, the reality of who you are. And very often there's some very unnice characteristics about you, okay, which is typical. No one's perfect, but you've been spending so much of your life ignoring them that this is the first time you're acknowledging these negative characteristics about yourself. And someone who has a lack of self-love, there's the element of shame is already there. All of us, there's a level of shame, but for those people who have a lack of self-love, it's just been instilled more and more and more over the years. And when you start to realize your negative traits within yourself, that feeling of shame becomes even deeper and deeper. And because it's the beginning of your journey, you also haven't learned how to be self-forgiving and self-compassionate enough to help yourself through that process. So the beginning of the self-love journey, if you have really been through some trauma in your life, that you know, maybe like me, you've ended up in a trauma later in your life, you didn't really suffer any real trauma in your childhood, then when you're trying to get yourself out of that trauma, it's always best to try and get someone to help you, to guide you through that as initial few weeks, if you're really going to focus on your self-love. And this is why, because this aftershock very often is too painful for people, and they end up just giving up, or they become more traumatized by the whole process, and they will refuse to ever go back there again because it was just too much to deal with. Okay. And again, I'm saying about the mindfulness and the self-care. The mindfulness and the self-care have to support you throughout this whole process. The practice of actually doing this uses up a significant amount of energy in comparison to, you're just going through day-to-day life, emotional energy. And it's really important that it's supported by mindfulness and self-care while you're doing this work. I mean, I know I'm saying it's making it sound really dramatic, but it can be very traumatic if you don't really look after yourself during the initial stages of doing this work. Mindfulness, absolutely any mindfulness practice can keep you in the present, meditation. So, I mean, there are millions. There are millions of different mindfulness practices that you can do, and many of them are completely free. YouTube, Insight Training, Insight Trainer, Insight. I can't remember. I use it and I can't remember what it's called. But there are many of them. Then we get to the self-care essentials. Now, I would say, from my experience, having been through this whole journey myself, and having looked at other self-care practices, these are the really important ones. If you're not exercising now, take at least a 15-minute walk every single day. It is super important. No one seems to realize how important exercise is. many people who are struggling with emotional dysregulation in some way, anxiety, don't know how to instill boundaries, they very often have a sleep issue. And sleep, there's sleep hygiene, which you can help yourself with to help with that sleep issue. But very often, until you start dealing with the self-love element, your sleep sort of stays in that place where it's quite dysregulated in some way. So I would say that if you commit yourself to all the self-care essentials too, that you'll find that your sleep is going to improve automatically without consciously focusing on your sleep. But sleep is almost one of the most important things to keep our minds functioning healthily. So it's to recognize it as one of the most important self-care commitments, but recognize that when you commit to all other self-care elements, your sleep will in itself start improving. Doesn't that make sense?
Yes, definitely
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. And you'll see, I think everything else is very self-explanatory. The reason why I mention supplements and essential oils is that, especially if you're living in the Western world, and I suppose also India is also known for the toxins in the environment, it really depletes a lot of the nutrients from your system. So I always encourage my clients to get a blood test at least once a year, just to check what their nutrient levels are like in their body. And some of them have often found that their vitamin D and vitamin B12 are super low, and which is often what causes the feelings, the depressive states and the anxiety. It contributes towards that. Because your vitamin B12 and your vitamin D are huge contributors in your wellness, your feelings of wellness. Practicing gratitude, believe it or not, makes a significant difference in your well-being. The simple thing of just practicing 3 things you're grateful for every day can make a significant difference. And then have a support network. There are many people who have been in toxic relationships. The toxic person in their life has actually alienated them from the people around them. And I know this can be challenging, and this is where you can maybe go find a support network, so not friends or family if you've been alienated from them, but another network. There are so many of them around there that you can connect with and just engage with a support network. And you'll also often find those people that you've discarded because your toxic person alienated you from them, are in most cases going to love having you back in their circle. So just try and be brave and be willing to reach out to those people. Some of them won't, that's going to be true, but you'll be surprised at how many would love to have you back in their circle. Okay. Now, there are also other additional, mainly somatic practices that you can do. And I know there's lots on social media, internet, about how, breathing, doing chakra healing, all of this is the answer to everything. And I can assure you it is not. Okay, it's a fantastic support practice, but to really build your self-love, you need to go through the conscious processing, and then also you can also do the somatic stuff, but you will not get to a healthy level of self-love without doing the conscious practicing of self-love. But somatic practices are fantastic, and I would always encourage you to use them as something to go alongside the conscious work. And something that's really important is to not push yourself. When I spoke about doing the emotions exercise, you never start on your most traumatic emotion or experience to go through that exercise. You start with something small, like you missed the bus, or I don't know, your boss told you off about something. Unless it's not something that causes you severe anxiety. I would encourage you to always start with the little things to get you used to being able to become aware of your emotions. And also to make you aware that if you are particularly struggling in your life, and even those people who aren't, who've been really good at ignoring all the signs of emotions that they haven't been processing, traumas that they haven't been processing, you have those people who are just really doing so well in life, but they've got no problems, and they don't worry about anything. If something's going wrong, oh no, I can get through that. But it tends to be because they can't deal with the emotions attached to whatever is going on in their life. And those people can also really struggle in going through this process. because obviously they've been doing so well at coping in life, and then they go straight to not coping at all. And it's just to really recognize that as long as you fully commit one day at a time to this process, you will get you wherever you're meant to be. And that's something that is a beautiful feeling to have. Is like, you know, whatever comes your way, you know you're going to be able to deal with it. You don't have to know what's going to come your way. You know you'll be able to deal with it. Some things are going to be more challenging than others, but you get to that point where you know you have confidence in yourself that you know you're going to be able to deal with it. Like, again, to reinforce again, it takes practice, 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 practice. Anything with practice, become better at.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea of the branches of self-love, this is really what I use in my practice. In some way, it is a linear process. I don't know whose 10 branches they are, but you'll find that almost anyone who works in building self-love uses the 10 branches of self-love. But for me, it's extremely important as to how they're focused on. So if you're going to go do this work on your own, just consider, although it's not a linear process, self-care has to be present. You cannot build self-awareness and self-acceptance if you haven't developed self-compassion and self-forgiveness, because that's what happens, that when you get to the self-awareness stage, it's impossible to accept yourself because you don't have that self-compassion and self-forgiveness to get you through. And that's where that aftershock comes in with people, when they start to realize their characteristics and they can't deal with it, just because they haven't built that self-compassion and self-forgiveness first. And then when you have that self-acceptance, when you've become to sort of recognize who you are and that's who you are, then that self-respect is about putting those boundaries in place. It's about saying no when it's important to say, when it doesn't meet your wants and needs. And as you start practicing that, then you start having that trust within yourself. And then you're able to start practicing that self-respect more and more often. So you can see how, although it is linear, it's not. They all have to work together all the time. And every situation brings a different obstacle. So you might have to start practicing a different level, different type of self-compassion or self-forgiveness in relation to one situation, even though you've developed really good self-forgiveness and self-compassion in relation to another situation. Okay, so that's how it works. And then you get to a healthy level of self-esteem. After that, it's a bigger thing. But really what we want people to get to is that healthy maintenance, that self-esteem. Yeah?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, and I just want to say, you know, there's the two elements of good enough is about being able to recognize when we're good enough. And that's really important. I know when I was healing, I was actually going to tattoo, I'm good enough everywhere. And it's only because I couldn't decide on the script and everything that I left it off. And a year later, I remembered that, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I didn't, because I'm not just good enough. I'm so much more than good enough. And that's all of us. All of us need to recognize that. But it is to recognize that while you're coming through that that healing process, or the process of building self-love, acknowledging that you're good enough can be the lifesaver. But I just want to tell you, so rely on saying to yourself, I'm good enough, because I know I had to say that to myself 100 times a day just to get myself through days. So you might have to rely on that to say, I'm good enough. But just remember what I'm also telling you, when you get through the self-love journey, you'll realize at the end that you are actually so much more than good enough. And I'd like you to believe that that is true right now.
Yeah, something just came up for me there that maybe you already put it before, but it was an aha moment of what you just said. Know when it's enough and know when you're good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please go on. Please go on. Sorry for cutting you off.
No, I think just the most important thing is to be kind to yourself. You know, a lot of my clients, they're really good at reframing, and they'll say, oh, next time I'm going to make sure I do this. And I say, okay, you know, are you being kind to yourself? And you won't believe the difference it makes me say, okay, you know, I recognize, sorry, let's take the whole context, starting right from self-forgiveness. They say, you know, I should have known better about that. I had that, and next time I'm going to make sure I do this. And then I say, okay, now how could you do that in a kind voice and say, okay, I realize it would have been better for me if I'd done that, but I didn't know any different at the time. But now I'm committed to doing it this way. And next time I'm going to try do this. And you will not believe the difference it makes talking kindly to yourself rather than just telling yourself, acknowledging what you've recognized and trying to reframe the whole situation. Talking kindly to yourself is extremely, extremely important. So try and cut yourself, the shoulds, the could'ves, try and cut those out of your language. Okay?
Yeah.
And then just my free gift to you, which I'll pass on to Tulsi, is I offer a free 45-minute chat to just about anyone. There's no obligation. You don't have to commit to absolutely anything with me, and I will help you as much as I can in that 45 minutes. And I'm also going to give Tulsi my free self-love toolkit. I mean, everyone gets it free anyway, but I'm just going to give it to Tulsi to hand out to you. So it's not on my website at the moment, only because I've changed website, but it was always on my old website. But there's another Love Yourself to Happiness online course, which I'd actually put to one side. I haven't touched for a year, but I've just had 2 of my old clients say to me how valuable they found this online program. So I'm going to share it, and I've had a recent one mention it, which reminded me I'd clean forgotten about this program. But I'm going to share this with Tulsi, so you can go through this too, because it has loads of activities to help you through each stage of the process, and hopefully that will help you build your self-love in some way. And
oh, wow. Chris, thank you. You put a thank you there. Thank you for offering this community 45 minutes of your free time to help them, and as well as the toolkit. That's really appreciative, because everything you've just said, boy, did you just nail everything. You nailed the 10 branches, the way self-love and self-healing works. And everyone who has healed from codependent situations and narcissistic abuse can put hand on heart that they had to heal that way. I can promise you that 10 branches is what majority people go through, and you've just nailed it straight on. I want to just thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate.
I'll just stop sharing, Chelsea.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time today.
It's my pleasure.
And the free sessions you've given the community, really appreciate it.
Okay. No, I'm there for people, so they can just book a session, and I'll give you the link to share with them if they want to have a chat with me.
Brilliant. And I think we got 3 questions here that most of the questions rounded up to these 3, right? So shall I start going ahead? You want to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Question number 1. What is the most dangerous aftermath, awareness and healing of codependent relationships and narcissistic abuse?
Okay, so I think there are 2 slightly different elements. I'm not quite sure. So first of all, we talk about the aftermath of self-awareness, and I mentioned the aftershock in already what I've said before, and you really have to be careful of that. The aftershock can be very traumatizing, so that's why you have to take things slowly. If you're finding everything is getting too intense, take it slow, okay? Rather get to the other end than become all traumatized again and go backwards again, because that tends to be what it does. It takes you backwards rather than just keeping you standing still. So that's one thing to really be cautious about, is the aftershock when you do this work. And the other thing is with narcissistic abuse, you must remember that they have undermined you over a long period of time. It's what they all do. They will undermine you in some way, whether it's gaslighting or just blatant abuse, or in whatever way. But when you start building that self-awareness, you start to realize, oh my God, look how I allowed someone to treat me, okay? And the shame is instilled even more at that point. So that's another thing. It might not be as much as about recognizing what type of person you are, the types of behaviors, the way you're behaving with other people. But when you start to recognize how you allowed someone else to treat you, that feeling of deep, intense shame is really difficult to come out of. So I would encourage you to just recognize that it's going to come up. It's not the aftershock and that are slightly different. That feeling more often sends you into a depression rather than the aftershock as such, the traumatized when they're two different types of outcomes. But on both of them, just take it slow and persist slowly. And every time something gets too much, you'll see in my self-love toolkit, breathing and mindfulness are extremely, extremely important to help you through this process. So just every time everything gets too overwhelming, just do some breathing and practice some mindfulness, and you'll see what a huge difference it can make. It will just calm you down and allow you to deal with the situation in a more rational way.
Yeah.
Does that answer?
Sorry, go ahead, please.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, I wanted to add about what you just answered there. So guys, I just want to say that there's two ways, right? You whatever way you're going to move forward, you still have to face it. Now, it's rather face the feelings that come up and face it than facing a new cycle of the same thing. It's still going to take you back. So facing it to go forward, even though it's slow, you rather face it than having to go through a new cycle of the same and go round. What is that like, you know, I'm just saying that from seeing people who have been in this situation and have then entered another situation so quickly without healing themselves. Yeah.
And also, I just want to say, I know many of the people in your community will be hesitant in reaching out for that 45-minute chat because they know they're mostly not going to be able to afford to sign up with me. I just want to say to them, you know, don't let that stop you. I really am here just to help you. Just if I can encourage you to take that next step, to start the process and give you some guidance as to, I mean, I've given you lots of guidance as to how to do it today, but if I can allow you to have that courage to actually go forward, you know, no matter what part of the world you are, you're going to have a positive impact somehow in my life, in the people I love's lives. So I would just encourage you to reach out. Don't hesitate, okay? If you feel it might be helpful.
Please, guys, contact Chris, okay? Even for the 45-minute session, whether you're brave or not, just have a chat. Have a chat. You don't have to take action. Just have a chat with Chris, okay? So question 2. What do you think is the root to why there are abusers and empaths? Would you say it begins with the wrong type of environment in childhood?
Yeah, I think studies are clear in that our childhood has the greatest impact as to why we are the way we are. And, you know, but I think we obviously have that parenting where it's blatantly abusive. And the reasons are obvious why we end up maybe the way we are after that. But also our nature also can often impact why we become the toxic person, or we become the person being undermined. You know, our nature can contribute as to why we end up being the person we are out of a relationship like that, a parenting relationship. But even the best of intentioned parents can make the mistakes that for some reason are going to create a huge impact in a person's life. You know, like take me for an example. You know, there was a huge impact in my life, but my upbringing was pretty good. My parenting was pretty good. So I think it's also, once we start really looking, and that's the other thing is because many people have problems with their parents. And when you start building that self-awareness and start recognizing your own failures, it becomes so much easier to accept the failures of your parents and to love them for who they are. But that doesn't mean to allow them to keep on treating you badly. Okay, they're two very different things, but it allows you to have some kind of compassionate relationship with your parents. And very often you find a different side to your parents when you allow yourself to do that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, most of the time it comes from parenting. There is a nature that contributes to it, but most of the time it's parenting that causes you to be who you are. And the greatest impact is up to the age of 8. So whatever life experiences you have up to 8 have the greatest impact on who you are as an adult. And it's also now evident that your experience in the womb has a significant impact as to your sort of mental well-being when you come out. So if you have a mother who was particularly anxious, stressed, or depressed while she was carrying you in your womb, that does carry over into the child. So those are contributing factors too, in relation to that.
That answers the question pretty well, I think, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So the last question we got from community members is, what is genuine happiness in relationships with children, parents, partners, marriage, and siblings in terms of healing? What does the healed person portray or learn? I saw that in yours.
Okay, so the thing is, it's more so. If we talk about a parent-child, so there have to be boundaries, but it's still about encouraging your child to build their own self-awareness, to become independent in a supportive way. So you're encouraging them to be self-reliant, but not so that they can never ask for help, you know, so they feel supported, and encourage them to share their views, always encouraging them to share how they feel. And the thing is, when you start doing that, two people together, whether that's parent or child or adult to adult, when people communicate in that way, it creates this trusting bond within people. Even if you disagree with each other, you can disagree in a compassionate way or a respectful way, and that causes people to want to keep on spending time around each other. Okay, and that creates a happy environment. It's very simplistic, but you know, and things happen, you know, people die unexpectedly, which put people into real sadness. But if you have that compassion, that feeling of compassion without going to the empathy, and you can hug someone and just really say, you know, I'm here for you, let me know if there's anything I can do, they will feel supported by you without the you know, the sympathy element, because, you know, lots of people, when a loved one dies, they get really irritated by the sympathy, where other people really love it. And those who are likely to be the codependents is because they like all the attention on them. But really, the best thing a person needs at that time is just support in getting through that time. You know, if you talk about anger, if you go and someone's cut you off on the road, just imagine what it's like to be around someone who says, oh, I wonder what's going on in their life today, you know, rather than someone, you know, doing some signs and swearing and everything. What difference does it make to you to be on the other side of someone who doesn't do that? Just try and think of that and recognize that that is just a happy state. It doesn't have to be this, oh, I feel so happy now. It's just about being able to be resilient with all the bad things that go in your life. And, you know, no one can be happy all the time. It's impossible. And really a level of happiness, of contentment in life really depends on how resilient you are in dealing with the bad times.
Yeah.
If you're resilient in dealing with the bad times, the happy times just come.
That's true. You know, I learned recently that you find out the truth of who a person is in the bad times. And if that person is really good to you in the bad times, that's a keeper, you know.
Yeah. But, you know, I think also, there has to be some compassion for people in that just because they can't handle the bad times doesn't mean they won't be willing to try to handle the bad times, you know. And
compassion.
Yes, compassion. I think that's something really important to take away, is when you can build that self-forgiveness and compassion for yourself, the healthy compassion you have for others comes naturally. So you don't have to worry about someone considering you to be compassionate in some way. Just focus on your self-love and being compassionate towards yourself, and you'll find that it will just flow towards other people.
True. You know, recently I just started to feel compassion about the narcissistic side, because I realized that, okay, maybe some parents are narcissistic, but maybe their parents abandoned them emotionally when they were kids.
Yes, but I think now what's really important is to draw the line between compassion and still committing time to these people. I would say that everyone can be healed. Everyone can build their self-love. I feel the label of narcissist. Everyone's this person's narcissist, that person, and most of the time, these people have just had some struggles in their life. Now you have the psychopaths and the sociopaths, where I think that is very much their identity, and if they're in any way demonstrate those behaviors, you stay away from them. You do not go near them. You don't even attempt to try and understand them. And it's not even about having compassion for them. It's just about literally staying clear of them because they're dangerous people. But others, there's struggles going on in your life, but it's about recognizing, being compassionate towards them. But also that self-love element is like, can I deal with this person in my life without negatively impacting me? And if the answer is no, and there's some kind of relationship with that person, it's the compassionate ways to go to them and saying, look, I know you really need someone at the moment, but I'm just really not in a place to be able to support you at the moment. So I'm really sorry, but what's best for me is for us to just maybe spend a little bit less time together. And when I have enough energy within myself, I want to be able to be here for you again. And the thing is that the other person might say, just when I need you, you go and leave me like that. But that's them, okay? Yeah. As long as you're compassionate in how you share that with them and respect what your needs are in that moment, then whatever needs to happen will happen. Okay, that's what I say to you. Yeah, I mean, there are obviously times when you maybe have a child or a parent where you just really can't cope, and you just have to try and push through, and that's when you have to try and find your own support from someone else to help you support yourself, help support you through supporting someone else.
Got it. Yeah. So guys, that is Chris Campbell. I just want to say that we are. Me and my parents are out here on a meditation retreat. So here they are, they in bed, both of them. they while they subconsciously listening to us on this meeting. Yeah, we're on a small meditation retreat here. So I think it's helped them as well.
Fantastic, Tati. Thanks again for inviting me on. I'm always really pleased to be able to share this with people because it makes such a huge difference to people's lives.
Definitely, and so honored to have you here and to share even with my parents today, and with the rest of the community. And it's been enlightening and helpful, and thank you for the sessions for the community. Excellent. Yes, so from me, guys, over and out, and I'm going to let Chris.
Have a lovely time, Chelsea. Have a lovely time, and I'm sure I'll chat to you soon. Yeah.
Sure, no worries, and speak soon, and see you guys on the next recording, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.